All right, so first thing I want you guys to do is go ahead and open up Substance Designer. So I'm giving that a moment on my end. Okay, so let's move. Okay, interesting. All right, I'm going to be showing you guys. Should I do? I'm going to have to mirror my window. There we go, because for some reason the okay, so go ahead and open up those files. So first things first, I'm going to open up just those. Let's see, I had cracked concrete tiles. If they show up outdated, just say yes to all. It should be fine. That'll be for later. So concrete squares, ground. I think the rest of them. Okay, so if you use textures.com, you're just going to need to create a new substance. So this one will be bricks. And I'll leave it at that. So, okay. And new substance. This one will be my stucco. So we'll start with the concrete squares for now. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys how to export your outputs as bitmaps. So again, we're going to export these out as textures. So I'm just going to scroll down here really quickly. There are some parameters that I can edit with this somewhere. There we go. Channels, no, basic parameters. There we go. Didn't expose the tile generator. Super. Okay, so wherever this tile generator is, actually, I'm going to keep it like this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to tile that inside of Maya instead. So we're going to just leave it just like this from my end. What I could do is I could just grab a tile generator color. In fact, I kind of want to do that instead. So I'm just going to grab a tile generator. I think these are all tile generator colors though, technically, since they're all bitmaps. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to, for pattern, image input. So we're going to put this in here. So we've got something like this. I'm going to set this to like, I don't know, 5. Nah, I'll do 3. So I've got something like this. Just doing a Control-D to duplicate. And it just wants a regular tile generator. Super.
This is the most unless than I've seen.
So I'm just feeding these in.
Wait, so is this stuff required?
No, I'm just doing this step because I don't want to have to deal with it later on. Height, ambient occlusion is not really a lot going on with this one. All right, so once you're happy with it, and again, I'm happy with this. What is nice is I can go in here to my tile generator. Rather than just leaving this repetition that I keep seeing over and over again, with the tile generator, I can now just do like a, let's see, what do that for me? Rotation random. Yeah, there we go. So I just get some more randomness plugged into there. So I'm going to do the same thing here, the rotation random. There we go. All right. Again, that just breaks up that repetition that I was saying with the one cube. So once you're happy with this, don't worry about this. We don't need any of that. Notice that these all have base color, roughness, metallic, normal, height, ambient occlusion. You guys probably noticed this, yes? Yeah. Actually, I do need to make a tile generator for that ambient occlusion. What you'll notice if you download a material from gametextures.com, you have very limited editing. Did you guys notice that? There's just not a lot going on here. They're all bitmaps plugged in and generated. And that's because gametextures.com is a paid for product. So they want you to go to gametextures.com and purchase their products. They do have some free ones available to you. But if you want to get to where you are opening up the original material where it's got all of those parameters and tile generators, grunge maps, all of that, they want you to go through and purchase their product. But for what we need for this, we don't need to do that. Grab one more of these. Plug. Is this the height? That is the height. Let's plug this in actually. And I'm just plugging in a gradient map into here. Oh, these are 256. Also, the other thing that I want you to notice is this is a 256 by 256. If you download anything from Substance Share, the resolution is going to be 256 by 256. If you guys are applying this to large scenes and large meshes, how do you think that 256 by 256 resolution is going to look? It's going to look awful, right? And you guys are wanting to jump, to 2K and 4K, and then yeah. So my point is if you download any materials from Substance Share, what do you need to do? You need to upscale. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm in the wrong section here. Let me undo this. There we go. So you're just going to double click your graph. You're going to change this resolution. So I'll just do a 2K. See, that looks so much better. And what am I getting here for the ambient occlusion? Yeah, I need to fix that. It's not giving me any of that information. So I'm just going to redo some of this down here. So I'm going to do, whoops, a normal to height. Is this the tile generator for the normal to height? Okay, let me do one more thing. Because that's going to bug me. So I'm going to grab a Transform 2D. I'm just going to turn the tiling off. I'm just going to do something like this. And then I'm going to feed this into a normal. What do we get from that? There we go. So that's a little bit better. I'm going to grab just a regular normal here instead. I'm just replacing some of this stuff so I have a little bit more control over what's going on. There we go. That's better. Now, as far as this black abyss is concerned, oh, that's from this. Okay. So we've got a normal to height. So now we've got something kind of like this, which I kind of like a little bit better because we've got that normal, that random happening. And so now we can grab an ambient occlusion. So you guys wouldn't know how to go through and edit somebody else's graph if you hadn't gone through week 2 stuff, right? If there's things that you're wanting to do, if you're wanting to tile this more, you probably are going to grab a tile generator, right? And plug that in. So I'm going to plug this. Yeah, that's much better. So I don't even need this tile generator. Plug this into here. And so now I've got a nice ambient occlusion. Much happier with that. Okay. So now that I've got my resolution that I wanted, which is a 2K resolution, I'm ready to export this out into a texture. So I'm going to right click my graph. I'm going to go to export outputs as bitmaps. And we don't really need a metallic map. We actually don't even need the height for this. So we really want the base color, normal roughness, and ambient occlusion. We want to set it from the default PNG to a Targa. And then the location, you want to make sure to save the location for this. So for me, I'm going to just go to desktop. I'm going to go to that concrete squares folder that I initially created right here. And I'm just going to save those outputs right here. And I'm going to do export outputs as bitmap. So it's currently exporting this for me. And then it says export done.
So we don't need which ones, height or metallic?
If it's not a metal, you don't need a metal. We won't need the height either. So with this workflow, we are working based off of textures rather than working with the parameters and things like that. When you guys get into LVL, Jen is going to show you guys how to use the Substance plugin. So that way you're able to use your substances directly inside of Unreal. This is just a different workflow, okay? So the next thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and go to my bricks. And for this, I decided to use an image-based material. So really quickly, I'm going to go in and I'm going to find that bricks image, which I just put right on my desktop. I'm going to go ahead and make a new folder now. And so I'm going to import my resource for that. And this is a 1024 by 1024. I hesitate making it a larger resolution. I know parent size, it says it's 256 by 256. That's not really what I want. Oops. So we've got this resolution. It's not too bad. So now I'm going to use the bitmap to material light version. So I'm going to just hit spacebar, bitmap to material light. And we played around with this a little bit last time. So I'm going to plug in my diffuse. I'm going to go ahead and set my output channels. So we'll keep diffuse as true because it doesn't use the metal roughness in the same sense. So we'll need to do a little bit of tweaking here. So I'm going to keep diffuse set to true, normal true, specular false, roughness true, glossiness false, metallic we'll set to true for now. Actually, we'll set that to false. We don't really, we'll hook something else up for that. We'll keep the ambient occlusion and the height there. I'm going to go ahead and set a new output. I'm going to name it AO. Label it AO. group material, give it a usage. So this is going to be acting as our ambient occlusion. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and hook up these outputs. Now there's going to be some tweaking that I'm going to need to do. You guys remember. And I'm just going to put a black uniform color here and just hit D to dock this. So first things first, how do you guys feel about this material, this end result? The grout is glossy. Let's check. So that would be in the roughness. Now it looks like it did a pretty okay job with the roughness, actually. It's really strange how, hi Stephanie. It's really strange how sometimes it will give you the inverse with the roughness, and then other times it'll also give you the inverse for the normal. Now I really want to mess around with this normal a little bit more. It's got some funkiness going on here. So this is going to be a little bit too dark for the engine. So I'm going to lighten this up just a little bit. So let's go into this bitmap to material light setting. So after we're done setting our channels, we're going to just start with global. Global, it just allows you to kind of play around with that depth balance. And I believe that'll be in the normal that we see that. Let's see. Yeah, so it's happening in the normal here. For this, I'm just going to reset this to default value, which is at 0. Not a huge fan of this normal. The diffuse, which is our base color with this. I kind of want to pull out some of the light just a little bit more. So this was our original. And we're not seeing much change between our original image and our base color. Now, why do you think I want to lighten up my base color? Correct, yeah. Typically, the base color is devoid of any sort of lighting information. So we need to go through and we need to make that adjustment. So I'm just going to single click on my, my bitmap so that way I still have my base color in view. And there's a few things that I can do here. So I'm going to just desaturate it just ever so slightly. Ooh, it's very sensitive, ever so slightly. I'm going to brighten it up. Let me bring that saturation back a little bit. So once we get in an engine, it's actually going to read a little bit better than you think it's going to. So leave that diffuse alone. Relief. So again, this is going more back to the normal. So I'm going to double click my normal, single click my bitmap to material. So with this, we do want to go ahead and invert this, I believe. No, I think it did it correctly the first time. Let's just test the parallaxing on this. Oh my gosh, that height. Okay. Or let's test the tessellation. And let's see what we get when we mess with that. Not seeing a whole lot here. Yeah, so there's just not, there's not a lot going on with this height map. So you see we've got just some areas that are large and lumpy and other areas, that aren't. So it tells me we just need to kind of manipulate this a little bit more. So I'm going back to my normal. And let's see if we can get this to work a little bit better. Let's see. So another thing to note, I am working on a PC. So if your guys' normals are going the wrong direction, it's probably because you're on a Mac. So you may need to invert that relief. With me, mine is going the correct direction. And that may be due to me being on a PC versus you guys being on a Mac. So make sure to check for that. So I'm just coming in and I'm adjusting this relief equalizer. So I just want you guys to kind of see the difference that that makes. Not a whole lot. So we got our large detail, so that's kind of a big thing here. Very large detail. There we go. So I'm actually getting a little bit farther with this. I know this looks crazy right now, but I'm getting a little bit closer to the end result that I'm looking for. So it's going to take a little bit of manipulation if you guys haven't noticed. It's not a perfect thing. Now you may find that even just messing with bitmap to material, you're still not getting the result that you want, and it's still coming out just not great. What do you think we need to do then if you're manipulating it, you're messing with it, and it's still just not giving you the results that you want? Look for another one. Yeah, don't spend too much time trying to make something work that's just not working. Like, for example, look at that grout. It's just popping out there. So I think that's in the medium detail here. So yeah, usually when I'm working with the relief, I start with I just put everything at 0, and I'll start with my large detail first. And notice that the very large detail, let's see if I can go beyond that. I can go beyond that value, but it's really still not giving me a whole lot of difference with that very large detail. So I just kind of bring it up a little bit at a time. And try to see if I can get those shapes better defined. Now, why do you think this specific image I'm having so much trouble with? Why do you think that is? Yes, so part of it is because there's a lot of bricks. The other thing is initially this resolution of this image was a 1024. So I have doubled the size of the resolution. So that already is affecting how bitmap to material is reading this. So maybe if I started off with a 1024 resolution rather than a 2048, we might get better results. And ultimately, it really just depends on what I'm going to be using this for. For me, I'm not a huge fan of this brick personally. I'm going to try to work with it due to time. And because I don't have my Mac where I've got all of my previously, uploaded materials on there, we're going to make lemonade out of the situation. So again, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to keep trying to manipulate this normal just a little bit more. And then I'm just going to move forward. I do have a normal sharpen here, which might help. Maybe. Doesn't look like it's doing too much for me. So let's bring in some of that medium detail. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of this one at all. How do you guys feel about it? Whoa. Let me turn off my tessellation because that may not. I'm sorry? It totally would. Let's pull back. Let's pull this back. Yep, just not feeling it. It's got like this really weird haloing effect. So these are the things that I'm going to be looking for whenever I'm looking at your guys' beauty shots, when I'm in the engine looking at this stuff. Now, if it's being seen from this far away, does it really, I mean, does it still work for you? Maybe, right? But chances are you guys are going to have beauty shots where, you know, these materials are going to be seen pretty well. Even from this view, it's not too terrible, right? But if you change the angle, you start kind of losing some of that. So I'm going to go ahead and find a brick material instead. Because brick is brick, right? So I'm either going to make my own brick material or I'm just going to find a new one. And in this case, I'm going to find a new one. And we'll roll with, let's look at this one. Yeah, I'm going to download this one. Okay, let me actually put this on my desktop. Do I have a brick folder? Doesn't look like it. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close this brick. It's just not working for this. So again, I downloaded this from Substance Share. Do you guys notice anything wrong? I'm sorry? Oh, no, this I don't care about. The resolution is at a 256, so we need to fix that.
But is it, when you update the resolution from the material, is it easier to do that than on the image, on the bitmap?
Yes, so if you're working with a material in Designer, it'll allow you to update the resolution without ruining the fidelity of the image itself. So if you're working with an image though, that's the image. So if you increase the resolution of an image, that's a little bit different, right? So with Substance Designer, because we're working in a procedural fashion, we can have it any size that we want and it not affect the overall look of the resolution. Does that make sense? With images, it's a little bit different. The pixels are already embedded there. They don't really, it's not a procedural material, right? So when you download and use images, you're already kind of limiting yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Versus making a material or downloading a material. And if you guys have time, I recommend, you know, making your own material versus trying to download and work with somebody else's pre-created work. You guys should have the time in theory, but if you have a reference image that has a lot of different materials, it's probably going to be, you know, potentially a little bit more trouble than it's worth, which is why I'm showing you guys kind of all the options that you have for this week's competency. You can use really whatever resources are available to you. Let's look at the bricks here really quickly. Brickware, brick tripping. So I'm going to go ahead and just export this out as bitmaps. And I'm going to put this in that bricks folder. Now stucco is a fairly forgiving thing. So this is, again, an image that I'm going to use bitmapped material with. So let's go back to my desktop and there it is, concrete stucco. Why do you think concrete or stucco or anything that doesn't really have a pattern is easier to work with? Exactly. Exactly. So let's see. So this is a 1024 by 1024. My outputs are set to 2048. Let's see how it looks. So again, I'm going to go through and I'm going to set my channels to true that I need and false to the ones that I don't need. And I need to create an output. So you guys remember when I showed you guys how to make that template? So you had an ambient occlusion? Yeah? So have you noticed that I keep having to make an ambient occlusion output because I'm not using a template? Again, it just adds to the time, right? So these are just those little things that you can do to save time for yourself. All right. So let's go ahead and hook these up. All right. So let's see what we got here. Base color. Again, it's got all of that lighting information in it, so we just need to pull some of that lighting information out. So I'm just going to brighten it up a bit, and then I'm going to desaturate it ever so slightly. How you guys feel about that roughness?
Whitish. Same.
A little too shiny, right?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to add a levels to this. I'm going to just bring this up to about here. Now you may bring things into Unreal and find that your materials are still reading way too shiny, way too dark. You'll just need to adjust the roughness inside the engine, and I'll show you guys how to do that. In fact, I'm going to leave this as default just so you guys can see how we'll need to fix that. All right, normal. I definitely want to play around with the normal a little bit on this one. So they were talking about business the other day, and now somebody getting suplexed next door. It sounds like wrestling is happening. All right. So again, I'm going to come in here and normal strength. I kind of want to bring that up a bit more. I want to bring my fine detail up a bit more. Actually, let me bring the normal strength down. That's a little too much. What's pinch intensity do? I'm not feeling that too much. Yeah, normal sharpen. I'm just bringing that up a little bit. Pulling back on that normal strength some. So I don't really need to do a whole lot with this, right? And if you need to, you can test to see if it's tiling by going to Materials, Edit, and I'm going to set this from 1 to 2. So this will just allow me to see if there's any seams here. Another thing that you can do is you can go to your base color and you can hit spacebar, and that also allows you to see it tiling. So I'm pretty happy with this. I'm not, there's not a whole lot to do with this material here. So I'm going to just do the same process where I export outputs as bitmaps. Again, I want it to be set to Targa. Don't need a metallic. I don't need my height. And I'm going to put it into a concrete stucco folder. Did I make? No. And I'm going to export outputs as bitmaps. So once I've done that, I'm done with Designer. I'm going to open up 2 more materials though, and that'll be for the vertex painting. You guys don't need to do that part. I just need to export these out. Desktop. All right. So as I mentioned, I am done with this. Let me go ahead and change my display properties again. All right. You guys online, are you still able to see the second monitor where my mouse is wiggling around? Perfect. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Maya with these meshes here. So you guys should have these. Yeah? Which one? Oh. Oh, you said which one? Perfect. And I'm going to focus on this mesh here. So I'm just going to isolate selection, put my pivot. All right, so I've got this snap to the grid. All right, so you guys have probably not applied textures or UV'd in this fashion. How are you used to UVing meshes that you know you're going to have materials applied to it? What are the rules? Okay, a little more.
You make sure that there's no stretching, you're all in the 0 point space, and they're all blue.
Perfect. So no stretching, no flipped UVs, all in the 0 to 1 space. Those are the rules you guys are used to following, right? We're about to break all of those. We're breaking all of those rules.
There are no rules anymore.
There aren't. That is exactly right. When it comes to, there's one rule, and that is making sure that it, okay, there's true. Yeah. It's making sure that your materials look good on your meshes, that it tiles properly, that you don't see any material seams. And what that means, you can overlap. You can scale your UVs out of 0 to 1 space, and guess what? You can even have flipped UVs. Yes. Yes, the engine doesn't care. So the first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to put brick down here. So I'm going to just select these faces. I'm also going to show you guys how to apply multiple materials onto a single mesh. Chances are you've probably accidentally done this before. Have you guys brought a mesh into Painter and it's got like Lambert 0, Lambert 1, Lambert 2, Lambert 3, and you're like, I only need one material. Why do I have all these materials assigned to it? Yeah. So I'm going to show you guys why you may want to do this on purpose. So let's look back at these meshes really quickly that I have here. If we look at them, one can assume that, these walls probably go together, right? The trim is the same, the lines are kind of the same. There's just a door opening, right? So really, do you want to make a unique material for each one of these meshes? If you know, let me just move. So if you know that this piece is supposed to snap to this piece, would you want to make that in, let me turn my grid snapping on just to make my life a little bit easier. So if you know that these pieces, and door, you can just go away for a while. These pieces are supposed to snap together, right? Or this wall is supposed to snap to a duplicate version of itself, because that's a way that you guys were working this month, right? You had walls that snapped together. Chances are they're using the same materials, right? Do you want a unique material made in Painter for every single one of these? Why would that, why or why not? It's kind of a waste of space. The other thing is, how difficult is it going to be for you to make sure that your meshes begin and end, or your UVs begin and end on the same point inside of Painter? Because if you're having to uniquely paint these materials on, getting them to set up tiling, again, that's probably a little bit more work than you want to put in. Now, if you just apply tiling materials to these meshes, you can reuse those materials inside of Unreal multiple times. So I'm going to show you a way to first UV a little bit unconventionally, how to use materials unconventionally, how to apply multiple materials to a single mesh, and then use cases on why you would want to do this. So first things first is I'm going to select the faces that I want to apply my first material on. phone is going crazy. Sorry, nobody wants to talk to me unless I'm in class. Let me turn that off. Huh? That is my phone. Nope, it's mine. I put it on silent. It won't happen again. All right, so once we've done that, I'm just going to shift right click and I'm going to, oh, okay. I'm just going to right click, assign favorite material, and I'm just going to assign a Lambert for now. And really, I'm only going to work with the base color for this because that's all I need to visualize how well my snapping is working. Make sure to give it a name. So I'm just going to call this M_bricks. Okay, bricks 1, because apparently I've done this before. Once I've done that, in the color section, I'm going to go ahead and apply my bricks texture that I just exported from Designer. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go to that bricks folder that is in here somewhere. There we go, bricks. So I'm just going to grab the base color for this. And I've already done the hard work for you guys, it looks like. Sort of. All right, but I've not done all the work for you guys. So I'm going to just duplicate this with my snapping on. Do you guys see an issue with this? You can kind of see the seam. So we need to fix this. So what was like the first thing that I said to you guys this month to always remember? What was like one of the first things that I said to you guys this month to always remember? The grid is your friend. Yeah, you guys remember. Okay, so I've already done some of the UVs for you guys, it looks like. Let me put this, can I put this in a better spot? Okay, let's see. Is that my UV editor? It sure isn't. All right, screw it. I'm still learning a few things with Paint Team. All right, so I'm going to focus on these here. So I'm just going to grab these UVs. And with my grid snapping turned on, you notice how much easier it is to move these UVs with that grid snap. And I'm actually going to select these and again, make sure that I'm snapping to that grid point. Now, the reason why we were seeing a seam is because we were stopping our UVs kind of midway through the texture. So it didn't line up with the end. We already know that the texture is tiling. We tested that out in Designer. It was tiling just fine. So where do I need to put the end part of these UVs? Well, it is on a grid, technically. On a grid end or beginning, exactly. So while I may like the resolution of this, I need to either extend it out or bring it in. I don't know, which way do you guys, do you want more bricks or less bricks? You want more bricks, okay. And then so now I just need to make sure that, because we do have a bit of stretching happening here, I want to fix that just a little bit. So I'm just going to grab these ends here. Now for this part, do you think snapping to the grid matters as much?
Yes.
Why?
Because it doesn't go down a little bit of stretching still.
Right, so you want to just manipulate it until stretching. Now that's not necessarily due to the grid though. So I could have it snap to the grid and it still, you know, be stretching, right? So really what you want to do is you want to get it to your ideal size, snapping to grid, but really the main thing is making sure that your bricks begin and end at the right spot. I don't want to just have it snapped to where it's, you know, snapping mid grid point. Now these bricks are actually pretty good as far as where the grid lines are lined up as. It looks like each one is kind of lined up on a grid point. So that's kind of nice. But what I typically do is I will get a resolution that I'm happy with. So maybe something like this. And I kind of want to end this on a grout line. So I'm going to turn my snapping off temporarily. And I'm going to grab actually the bottom here. Oops, keep hitting the function key. So it's stretching a little bit more than what I want. So I want it to end kind of on a grout line here. So this is when turning snapping off is totally fine. Now, I think I want a larger resolution for this. So I'm going to turn my grid snap back on. There's a lot of bricks here. I think I want less bricks. How do you guys feel about less bricks with this? There's already quite a few.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to bring it back to here. So I'm just essentially doubling the size of this. So I'm going to grab this upper area and whoop, let's do something closer to this. So you guys see where I'm now breaking midway with a brick right here? Doesn't look very good. So I'm just going to grab that bottom. So you can see right where this is happening. So do you guys notice also an issue with the UVs that I'm working with right now? So if I'm looking here, I notice that I'm at a midpoint with a brick. But if I look at the top, I'm not at a midpoint with the brick. What's wrong with my UVs? Yes, they're upside down. This is actually the upper part, but I'm manipulating the bottom UVs. My UVs are upside down. So if it's confusing, did you know that? I don't think you did. So I'm just gonna go ahead and fix this right now because it's gonna drive me crazy. So now I can focus on the bottom and manipulate the bottom instead. So the bottom is affecting the bottom. Let me turn my grid snap back off. And I'm just gonna move this, like I said, to where it's ending on a grout line. Because it's very unlikely that pavers are gonna go through and be like, well, we're gonna just, cut these bricks in half. It's very unlikely that they're gonna do that. So we're just gonna eyeball this to try to get that grout line about like that. Yeah, feeling good about that. So now we've got our bricks. So a way that we can test this now is if we duplicate this, turn our grid snap on, let's see if we can see a seam. You guys see any seam? Somebody say yes. So this is where our meshes meet, is right here. And we've got no texture seam. So it's good, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. All right, so next let's go ahead and move on to the stucco. We'll come back to the trim. So I'm just gonna delete this guy here. And I'm gonna grab these faces next and do the same thing. Now with this, I'm gonna actually just planar map this. Because notice I didn't do the UVs for that one for you guys. So with this, I'm gonna go to UVs and I'm gonna go to planar and I'm gonna project in what axis? Somebody say Z? Speak up. I'm gonna project in the Z axis. I also wanna make sure that I keep the image width height ratio turned on. So I'm gonna hit apply.
Are you selecting the back?
Yep, I'm selecting the back too. I'm just showing you examples on all the rules that you can break. Also, one of the things that I did fail to do. So I need to assign a new favorite material to this. So we're gonna do another Lambert. Just gonna name this M_stucco. I'm gonna find that stucco texture, that base color. So I'm gonna go to File. Find that stucco, there it is, and just grab the base color, open, and there it is. So I'm not a huge fan of the resolution of this, so I'm gonna probably work with this quite a bit. So going back with this, so what are the rules that I need to follow for this? If I'm wanting this to be smaller scale, if I'm wanting the texture to be a smaller scale, what do I want to do with my UVs? I'm sorry?
What?
If I want my stucco texture to tile more or to repeat more, I need to scale up my UVs, yes. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in one direction. No band jokes, please. I know, I saw it. So I'm just going through. Now, again, this is one of the bad parts about photo sourcing. Now, this isn't too bad. I can probably work with this. Now, at the top, if there's not another stucco material tiling for the top, does it really matter where this ends? It doesn't, no. Because my ceiling is probably not going to be the same material. So really, I'm just going to manipulate this until I'm happy with it. So I'm kind of happy with it having a little bit of stretching in here, actually. So again, so long as it begins and ends on a grid point, because these are where the tiling points are, right? So as long as you're doing that, your materials are going to look good. So again, we can come in here, we can test this. Now, another thing that I want to note is if you're using realistic looking materials, you want to make sure that all of your materials kind of have the same art style going, right? This is kind of a little bit of a stylized brick versus the stucco is, you know, a picture, so it's realistic. And yes, you were absolutely right, Stephanie. They don't really match too well, but we'll see how well it looks once we get them in Engine. Now, the dangerous part about tiling materials that are already tiling or image-based tiling is, again, you guys are probably already starting to see some of these patterns here, right? And if you couldn't, you definitely see them now. Right, I think you mentioned before, like with working with Designer, you're gonna see like really obvious repetition. Yeah, so there you go. There's those areas of repetition. So depending on what you need it for, how often the player is gonna pass by it, that may determine, you know, how well you use this. Now, I'm also going to show you guys vertex painting, which is also going to allow you to blend out some of those obvious repetition points. So we'll go into that here in just a few minutes. So the next material that I want to apply is what? The trim or the concrete tiles that we found, right? So I'm going to assign a new material with this. I'm going to name this concrete tiles and not trim. Why am I going to do that? Why would I want to name my material concrete tiles instead of trim? Because that's what I do. No, no, that's not why.
So you can reuse it.
So I could reuse it, exactly. I'm going to also put these concrete tiles on a floor piece. And so if I have it labeled concrete, or I have it labeled trim, that may just tell whoever's coming in working with these materials that it's only to be used for trim, right? If I've got it just as the specific material where it's concrete tiles, that again already has whoever's working with it kind of thinking in a modular workflow. So again, I'm going to find that concrete tiles texture. So it's not going to look good at first. We've got to go back in and manipulate these UVs. So I'm also going to do another, actually going to leave that probably as is. No, I'm going to go ahead and select it. So I'm going to do another planar map with this. So if we look at this, also something that may be easier for you guys as well is after a while, if you want to, you can move these UVs. Since we have grid snap turned on, if you want to just get them out of 0 to 1 space because they're, you know, they are tiling. Oh, I turned my grid snap off. Oops. And I just move them to, you know, say somewhere around here. I think I need to, yep, that's what I was worried about. So that was roughly here. This was here. There we go. All right. So if it gets confusing, this is one of the really nice things about being able to work out of the 0 to 1 space. You don't have to work with everything in that space, right? Right. Oops. So I'm going to move this back into that 0 to 1 space. All right. So what do you guys think I'm going to do with this material or these UVs? I'm going to scale them. I'm going to scale them a lot. So again, with Grid Snap turned on, I'm going to do something kind of like this. I'm going to grab these ends. And I'm just going to scale these up to kind of get rid of some of that stretching. So these are ways that you can use materials kind of in those non-conventional ways. Now notice I've got a lot of stretching here. So do I need to fix this? Why do I need to fix this? The stretching that I see right here, why do I need to fix this?
Because the player's going to be able to see it.
The player is going to be able to see it, exactly. So I'm just selecting those ends. I'll need to do the bottom as well.
Does the bottom matter? Because they really see that though.
They might. It takes a little bit of effort to fix that. So with this, I'm going to go ahead and turn my grid snapping off and really just kind of eyeball it. In fact, let's see where we're at with an end part. So maybe something like that. So I'm seeing kind of that end seam here. And I'm going to do the same thing with the bottom. Now what about the sides? There's a lot of stretching happening on the sides of this entire wall. Do I need to fix that? Why? The player might see it, the player might not see it. It really just depends on what you're doing with your scene. If it's not seen in your beauty shot, you guys don't have to worry about it. If it is seen in your beauty shot though, I'm going to be looking for stretching. Like just in your beauty shot, I'm going to specifically be looking for stretching. Oh, there we go. And with this, do I really want to go all the way to finding? There we go, there it is. And I also think I'm going to go ahead and just soften the edges for this. Yeah, I'm going to soften those edges. So that's another way that you guys can use materials in an unconventional way. If we look, if I was only using this trim or this texture for this trim, do you think I want to go through it? I mean, do you think I need a whole tiling material for this? Like a 2K tiling material? Do you think I need that if I was only using this material for that trim and not the floor that I'm about to make? No, I would use either a smaller resolution tiling material or I would use it in part of like a texture collage where I've got these tiles maybe on a first row and then some other textures on the second row. So again, that's kind of the beauty of working with with textures instead of working with maybe the Substance plugin at that point. Now, again, with the Substance plugin, you can have lower resolutions. You've got the parameters that you can go through and manipulate. But at the end of the day, if you just need it for a small part of something and you're not using Painter for it, make it just a small section and then put in, maybe your window frames or things like that, something that doesn't require a large resolution, sharing the same texture, and that's just called a texture collage. Now you may be limited to working in the 0 to 1 space with some of it, but for this, I could have it just containing in this entire area and just going left to right, tiling as a 2-way texture rather than a 4-way texture. Does that make sense? 2-way versus 4-way tiling? Cool. Okay. Just really quickly, let me just make a floor, and then we'll bring this into Unreal. I never fixed my resolution on this one. You can see how often I'm in Maya on this laptop. Actually, right. Scaling. So I've got something like this. I can now just apply my favorite or an existing material, which was the concrete tiles. And I'll planar map this in the y-axis. And right now, if I just left it at the y-axis, it cuts off midway through those tiles, right? So this is one of those cases where a little bit of stretching is not a huge deal with something like this, right? Right. So, and actually in this case, I'm just going to double the size. Yeah, something like that. So now I have repurposed. Would you have ever, if you just seen this, I know it's fun to think hypothetically now, but if you just seen this, would you have thought that this material was the same as this material?
No.
Exactly. So it's really just a useful way to reuse some of those resources. Maybe you're in art block and you can't bring in any more materials. You're going to have to be resourceful and think in these ways. You may even find that some of the mesh that you guys have made, maybe you need stairs and you never brought in a stair mesh. What are you going to do? Probably shrink down one of your walls, throw on a tiling material, and just duplicate it upwards, right? You do what you got to do with the resources that you're limited with, right? So my point in showing you guys this is just thinking in kind of a modular, outside of the box workflow. So now that we've done all of this, what do we need to do before we export and bring this into Unreal? Yeah, hopefully you guys won't have to freeze your transforms. Hopefully everything that you're working in will have that, but definitely delete history. So let's say freeze transforms, delete history, same thing. Is that not freeze transform? There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and export this out. I'm just going to put it on the desktop. You guys can put it wherever you want. Everything should be good on this. Let's put it at 2016. Yes, your meshes should still be at the origin, but yes, yours, the ones that you're working in right now, yes. But the ones for your reference, hopefully you guys did that right the first time.
I'm still confused on why it's okay to leave or have the UVs out of the 0 1 space. Like,
so with the engine, it only looks at the UVs as far as how to render the material applied to it. Now, when we get into lighting, then we go back to the rules. We're gonna have a second set of UVs that we're creating.
Oh, okay, so it's just for this week that doesn't matter.
It's just for this week, yep.
Okay, I was thinking like in general that.
When it comes to texturing, okay, so the reason why you have to have your meshes in the 0 to 1 space to begin with, when it comes to working with Painter, is because you're baking. When you're baking, the engine or whatever it's rendering in only looks in that 0 to 1 space. Now, if you guys notice, like with Maya, for example, it will show things, outside of the 0 to 1 space. Really, all you're saying is with these UVs, you're just wanting to repeat the texture, right? So if we look at, see image, where is it? I think it's image right. Anyway, you could technically have it repeating, like show the image repeating, and that would just show you kind of where you would place, your UVs is a little bit easier. But the whole purpose of having to stay in the 0 to 1 space is only for baking purposes. If you're not baking, there's no rules really, other than just making sure that your materials look good on your meshes. Okay? So it's more or less not about, hey, we're breaking the rules. It's, hey, you don't need the rules. The rules will only apply to baking. And the reason why we have to go back to the rules when it comes to lighting, do you guys know why? Because we're baking the lighting. We're baking the lighting and shadow information onto our UVs. So we'll have a second set of UVs that we're working with that the engine will then look at. The engine will know, we'll tell the engine to look at that second set of UVs so it knows to bake from those UVs. Yes?
So then the meshes usually have 2 UV channels.
Yes, your meshes that you have in Unreal right now that you guys submitted from week 1, they have 2 UV channels. You just didn't know it. When you had your import box that shows up, and I'll show you that in a moment, there's a checkbox that says generate light map UVs. That's telling Unreal to generate your second set of UVs for you. So yes, your meshes, if you're bringing them into Engine, will always have a second set of UVs unless you tell it not to.
Is there times when they'll have more than 2?
Yes, usually if you're doing like texture swaps and things like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and export the floor out. And then we'll go ahead and open up Unreal. It's going to take its sweet time opening. So I'm going to go ahead and launch 4.19. And for this, you guys can just, so we want to work with the first person blueprint. And we can work with the default lit scene for that, because again, it's just for display purposes. It's at 45% initializing. Those of you guys online, we are almost done. We're just going to apply those materials or create those materials and apply them to our meshes. I'm still so upset about the parking situation today. Like I was here quite early too, and I was just up and down the lanes, and they have like a random barrier too, but you can park on the other side. It was very frustrating.
Usually though, like when events, like we never had that, so I just drove into event parking. But it's like the truck's so long that I can't back out, so I had to park in the worst place.
Yeah, it's just frustrating. It's very frustrating. And anytime I would see a parking spot, I'd be like, oh, there it is, and I'd go, and then somebody just right before me. Yeah. They were just a little bit faster. All right, so we're gonna work with first person. Again, no starter content. I'll just call this week 3, 18, not 19, 1809. Put an underscore here. Man, my window gathering. There we go. Create project. So once you guys open up Unreal, just go to new scene. There we are. So file, or new level, sorry. We can work with the default one. That's totally fine with this. I'm going to delete this floor though, because we don't need it. And just for continuity's sake, I'm going to just give myself my own folder here. I'm going to make new folders. So at this point, if you guys want to delete your proxy meshes in your proxy mesh folder in Unreal, you can. I've graded week 1 stuff, so it doesn't need to be in there. If you want to keep it in there, that's fine, but it's just making your file sizes larger when they don't need to be. So if you do want to delete those proxy meshes and that proxy mesh folder for week 3 and week 4's turn in, totally fine. So static mesh. And just a reminder, I'm only grading what's inside your named folder. Textures. What's the difference between a texture and a material?
One of the maps, the materials, all maps.
Correct. So the texture is just one map of the entire material. A texture is like base color. That's a texture. Normal. That's a texture. And what is a material? The whole thing. Yep. Now, I don't want you guys making different subfolders inside your textures. I don't want a stucco folder that's got your base color normal. Don't do that. Just keep it all in one folder so I don't have to keep clicking inside folders, so you don't have to keep clicking inside folders. It'll all be in order. If you're looking for your stucco, all of your stucco maps will be together. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and import my textures. Trying to remember what I had. So I had the concrete squares. So I want that ambient occlusion, that base color, normal, and roughness. So I'm going to open that. My ambient occlusion looks a little weird. I'm going to go to my bricks. Well, stucco, because I saw that first. Where is it? There it is. I'm just blind. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and import that static mesh. Now, you guys will be re-importing your original meshes. So what that's going to do, because right now the meshes that you have inside of Unreal, they have those automatic UVs, right? So all you're going to do, again, hopefully you guys had your pivots in the correct spot, and you know your naming convention isn't changing. So all you'll need to do is just treat it like a normal import. You'll go to your desktop, or wherever you have your static meshes saved. In my case, it's the desktop. You'll import your wall. If you're, wow, what in the world is, my windows are driving me nuts. Super, okay. Luckily, I don't think I need anything up there. But if your import dialog box does not show up, what do you need to do?
Go back and enable or those preferences to show.
Yep, you need to fix that in your preferences. So what we need for this is we just need to make sure that we have import materials and textures turned off, and it will update. It should update just fine for the location. So I'm going to import. I'll show you what I mean here in just a moment. Let me just turn this. so you guys can see that better. So if I am placing these, if I've got these placed, is my snapping working? My snapping is, that's right, I forgot I need to fix that. What you guys are going to notice is the snapping is off. So you'll just need to change your tolerance from 10 to 5. I forgot that I changed my grid. Of course, yours may work okay. So if I were to go back through and I needed to import this, all I would do is go to, and let me fix my preferences because I haven't done that with this project yet. Trying to remember where the preferences are on the Windows side. Don't think it's the editor preferences. No, it is, okay. So I'm gonna go to miscellaneous and show import dialog on re-import. Set as default, yes, yes, and okay. So when I'm ready, let's say that I needed to re-import this. Let's say that it, for whatever reason, in this case, I've updated my UV. So again, I can just come in here, find that wall, open, say yes. Just make sure that everything here is good. Like, let's say that I brought in a doorway and I forgot to bring in my custom collision, again, and I just do an import. Everything stays in the same place. Nothing should move. I shouldn't have to rebuild my entire level, okay? So if you guys did everything correct, where your pivot placement is good, all that good stuff, you shouldn't have to rebuild anything. It will just pop right into place because that's where the engine knows that I've placed these. Does that make sense? Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and start creating my materials. So how many materials do I need? 3. So m_bricks, m_stucco, m_, what does the M stand for? Yeah, just check it. And concrete tiles. So I'm just going to open these up. I'm just going to put these here. And I'm going to grab my textures. So I'm going to start with my brick. So I'm just going to hold control. I don't need my height actually. I didn't mean to bring that in. And I never made an ambient occlusion for that. Okay. So I'm just going to hover over this, bring these in. We're almost done, guys. So base color, my normal, and my roughness. So here's our bricks. And let's go ahead and go to the concrete tiles. Don't need this. And roughness. And I'm going to go ahead and plug up the ambient occlusion for this. Why not? Normal, roughness, and base color. So what are you guys noticing about these concrete tiles? They're shiny. Even though when you look at this roughness, it doesn't look too bad, right? No, it's not that it's reversed in the engine, because look, we still have it bouncing where we've got it darker here. It just comes in darker. The engine's a little bit more sensitive to it. So we need to, I believe it's a multiply. So I'm going to grab a constant. No, it's an add. I think it's an add. This will only work with grayscale images, this process. Actually, I want to set this to B, I think. I'm going to plug this into roughness. I want you guys to see. So 0 and 1 are our parameters here. 1 is what? What do you think 1 is? It's max, right? It's max. So it's going to be very matte. So think of if this is black by default, 0 is black by default, 1 is going to be white by default, right? So if I hit enter and set that to 1, we have like, you know, no roughness happening here. So we don't really want that. So I'm just going to put it to like a 0.2 for now, because I do have roughness here. It's not like it's completely dark. It's just a little too dark. I still want some smooth and shininess happening. That's still a little low. So let's do like a 0.4. I think this is closer to what I want. So this just, yeah, I like that a lot better. So this prevents me from having to go back into Designer, add a levels. I can just put an add here and then a constant. So I'm just holding down the 1 key to get a constant. So 1 and click. That's a constant. So by doing this, I'm able to make that adjustment to the roughness without having to leave the engine. So this works really well for your ambient occlusion, your height, your roughness, anything that's a grayscale image. Make sense? Super. So now I'm going to go to the stucco. I'm still not really happy with the stucco. I really don't like photo sourcing anymore with Designer being a thing. So way back in the day, a lot of times that's all we had was working with, wow, I sound really like a grandma now. That's all we had. Was working with Photoshop and, you know, manipulating photos. It was not that it was harder, because it wasn't that it was harder. It was just, it presented, you know, different challenges than what we have here. You guys still have things tricky. I'm not saying it's way easier now. It's different, right? You guys have to think about some different things. That's still, yeah, it's easier. You guys have it way easier now. We have it way easier now. All right, so now that we have these materials made, now I could just drag and drop these materials on the different faces and it work. But what I prefer doing is actually going to the static mesh itself, since I want it to populate all of these at one time, rather than, again, manually having to drag and drop these materials on every single one. Notice that I have this nice, lovely list of materials here. So I'm going to come in here and select, I don't know which one is which because I failed at labeling my materials. So let's try bricks. That just happened to work. Bricks, let's do stucco, which is in here. Nope, okay, so that one is the concrete tiles. There we go. There it is. Okay, so that was actually the Lambert. Okay. Don't worry about that. Stucco, there we go. So the reason why I actually have 4 materials on here, do you guys know why? Because I still had a Lambert one on there, and I never rode that. So also notice that we have a decent amount of stretching here. Is that a problem? Not unless I see it, right? So in this case, you know, it's not a thing. Now, something else that I want to note, you guys see this seam happening here. Why is that happening? Because of the lighting, right? It says lighting needs to be rebuilt. Do I want to do this? No. Why do I not want to rebuild my lighting? It will create a light map for me, but Unreal does not cut edges, does not cut UV seams. It doesn't have any really custom UVing to it. And so what it will do for the areas that I did planar map, where I've got faces on top of faces and flipped UVs, it's still going to make that stuff. Like, it's going to do the best that it can, but it's not going to cut those up. So if you are absolutely like not into the seam that you're seeing, when you do your beauty shot, you can do it in unlit mode. That's fine. Or you can leave it in lit and have the seam be visible. Let me just show you guys what happens when you build and you don't have your light map UV set up. So we'll give this a moment. This is the first time I've built lighting on this computer, which is why it's taking a little bit longer than normal. Look at that. So this is why you guys don't want to build your lighting until you've done your light maps. Now, you guys have, a little extra time to do week 3 stuff, so it's a little bit differently. You won't run into this issue. But if you're trying to see what your light, your stuff looks like lit, you may not want to until you've got your light map UVs set up. So if that happens, again, you've got 2 options. You can leave it like this. You can go to unlit, or you can just, I'm sorry, go to wireframe? No. So to fix this, all you've got to do is actually just move your mesh or re-import the mesh. The reason why do you guys think that I need to move my mesh in order to, since it's baked lighting, it breaks the bake. Yes.
So how would you get rid of it? So the only way that's going to get rid of that 500 would go to unlit mode.
So until you deal with your light maps, yes, the only way to get rid of this shadow is to go into unlit mode, because this immediately tells us that it's a lighting issue, not a texture issue, right? So if we go to lighting only, we can see that there is a seam here. So this is due to our light map UVs. So when we get into week 4, we'll go into how to fix this. It's really simple. It's a little annoying to do light map UVs. So you guys will probably want to put like some classical music on. It's a little tedious, but it'll get you better build results. Do you guys have any questions on this process that we went over? So this is now your part 2 of your competency, where you are going to be applying textures, creating materials, and bringing them into Unreal. This should be fun. You look like you're so frustrated right now. I do have an online question, so let's see. Perfect. All right, perfect, Stephanie. No worries. It's pretty straightforward, but if anything's unclear, you let me know on Slack, and I'm happy to help. All right. So, any of you guys on campus? Any questions for me before I send you on your merry way?
No, I already saw it.
That'll be Friday. That'll be Friday. It's really easy to set up. You had a question, or are you just stretching?
For this competency, what exactly do we have to do for it? Do we just import all the like objects that were in the matches that you gave us?
So you are doing this process on your own meshes.
Okay.
Yeah, we just did this for a lecture activity. So, any other questions? All right, guys, be in lab at what time? 4:15. 4:15.
Also, you just trust us and said yes.